Mario Kart seems to be the hot topic of the internet now, especially with the release of Wave 1 of the Booster Course Pass. The pass basically includes remasters of old courses, and it got me thinking back to some of my favorite Mario Kart tracks that I might want to see return. A game that I definitely want to see more courses from is Mario Kart DS. This specific entry played a massive role in my childhood, and it's home to some fan-favorite courses like Waluigi Pinball. All this Mario Kart talk also had me thinking about more custom courses. Mods like CTGP or Kart are super cool and sometimes funny, and this really sparked something in my mind over the past week. I should make my own custom course. It could be really fun and give me a nice break from constantly making complete games. To keep things simple, I'll be creating a course for Mario Kart DS. Make sure you stick to the end to see the full result. Before I get started on making my own custom course, I want to give a big shout out to NintyYoshi. They created a really good series known as Mario Kart DS Workshop, which teaches you all of the basics of creating custom courses for Mario Kart DS. NintyYoshi walks you through creating your first custom course, from the tools, modeling, texturing, and more. If you are interested in learning how to make mods for Mario Kart DS, I highly recommend checking their series out. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So without further ado, let's jump right into making a custom Mario Kart DS course. So the first thing I had to come up with was a plan for the course. I wanted this course to be fun and silly, and it needed to be a simple shape as well. I was thinking, what is a somewhat relevant or even ironically funny thing that is a simple shape that could work as a course for a racetrack? Yeah, I guess that could work, even if I pulled this card way too many times to be considered healthy. So after coming to that wacky conclusion, I drew up a quick sketch of what the course would look like from a top-down view, and a somewhat 3D perspective as well. Basically, these images would showcase things like where you would start, where items would be, and what other track elements I would include. Not surprisingly, this would work really nicely as a course later on. With that, I hopped on over to Blender and began modeling the course. The first step to modeling the course was to basically create the shape of the main road. To do so, I basically made a Bezier curve and just remade the Amogus shape with it. After this, I made a plane, applied an array and curve modifier, and voila! I quickly made a road in the shape of Amogus. After this, I modified the heights of certain areas of the road to match the concept sketch. Then, to give the course some more depth, I extruded the outside vertices downwards to make it more 3D. Then, to test the course out, I applied a basic texture and hopped on over to Mario Kart Toolbox. In here, I imported the model, added some collision, and rebuilt the game with it applied. And here's what it looked like in-game. The model import worked, which is the most important part. However, with the basic texture, it was kinda hard to see where I was driving and whatnot. Also, the model was a bit small, so I ended up resizing it a bit later. Back over to Blender, to see what the course looked like with some textures, I basically loaded up a road and a brick one just to test, and I mapped each texture to the appropriate area. With these textures, it looks so much better in-game, and it gave me a sense of how good this would actually work as a course. Next up, I decided to model the tunnels I marked on the concept map. This was really easy to do, and just required extruding and filling in some gaps. As a side note, as I was modeling, I had to keep in mind the number of triangles in the model. I wanted this to be able to run on actual hardware, so I had to keep the tri count under 2048, as that is the max that the DS can render. After modeling these in, I replaced some of the textures with more rocky ones from other courses and imported them back into Mario Kart Toolbox. Inside of here as well, I was easily able to generate a bottom screen map of the course, so that was really cool. Also, here's what the updated textures and scale look like in-game. The course was really starting to come along, and the tunnels I decided to add were really giving it a bit more life. With the main course modeled, it was time to start adding in some environmental details. The first thing I wanted to add was perhaps one of my favorite things to come out of Among Us, and that is the famed Germa when the imposter is sus face. One thing to keep in mind for the DS is that textures should be a maximum size of 256 by 256, so I had to work with smaller sizes like 64 by 64 to make sure that everything compressed properly. For Germa, I basically placed his face at the entrance and exit of each of the tunnels. After this, I worked on adding some twerking dumpy Among Us signs and slapping those along the course. To add some spice to the center of the stage, I took the emergency meeting pop-up and slapped it right in the middle of the first tunnel. To spice up the lower half of the map, I took an image of the airship and just made it float, just to give the course a bit more character. Then I decided I should model out the emergency button from Among Us to place somewhere on the map. I originally placed it at the top of the first tunnel, but I ended up changing this later. After this, I took some more PNGs of the Amogus, a dead crewmate, and a custom sign that said sus card, and tossed these around the map as well. After all of this, I tested the map out and yeah, let's just say the map was kinda broken. Not all of the textures were loading in correctly, and I knew the reason right away. Basically, I was kinda stupid and originally made every texture the maximum size of 256 by 256. So the DS was having issues rendering these large images. So to fix this, I basically had to downscale all the textures, and it ended up looking just fine because the DS resolution is not the best on its own. Then, this is the part where I thought the emergency button should be some sort of hazard, so I actually just moved it down into the second tunnel, and you'd simply have to go to either side of it. It's a simple hazard, but it works perfectly fine. After this, I imported this into the game, and tested to see how it ran. The course was finally starting to come together. However, some important things like laps still didn't work, so it was time to start working on creating the checkpoint map and item/enemy paths. The main reason this didn't work was because I imported this course over the Figure 8 circuit. So as we see here, the main path that the game recognizes is the one from Figure 8 circuit. Mario Kart Toolbox basically allows you to click and drag to generate different points, so I spent some time doing this, and here's the end result. Green/red lines represent the checkpoint boundaries, the blue lines represent key checkpoints, the orange lines represent respawn checkpoints if you fall off the map, and the green line going through all of this represents the path that enemies and items would go along. One of the last things I decided to test out was the course image generator, so I took a snapshot of the stage, resized it to the proper size, and loaded it into Mario Kart Toolbox. After all of that, I added in item boxes as well. Finally, with all of that complete, it was time to test a proper race on it. Then I thought to myself, a proper race needs a proper character to play as. I searched around and found a few funny characters like Steve from Minecraft, Boyfriend from Friday Night Funkin', Lightning McQueen, and the one I ultimately chose, a crewmate. Since this entire level is based around Among Us, it was perfectly fitting. With the crewmate added, it was time to actually race. Loading into the map, I was quite excited to see if everything worked. The intro cutscene was scuffed, but who cares about that? Once I actually got into the race, everything was working perfectly. Items and computer paths were working amazingly, and so were laps. I was insanely happy with how this turned out. The last thing I actually wanted to do was test this out on real hardware. Considering I was following the limitations of an actual DS, this theoretically should work on it. So, I loaded up the ROM onto a flash card, and voila! The course ran perfectly on my console. To me, this was the coolest thing, because it's one thing if you make a custom course and run it on an emulator, and a completely different thing if you can actually make it run on real hardware. So yeah, this custom course was a success. I had a blast making this course, as the entire process was quite easy, and just in general really fun to do. Once again, massive shout out to NintyYoshi for making the Mario Kart DS workshop series. It was insanely helpful. If you want to try this insanely cursed course for yourself, there's a link in the description to the X-Delta file. I can't give out the actual ROM because Nintendo would probably unalive me, but the patch file I should be fine to give out hopefully. It should be quite easy to patch once you find a ROM, which I'll let you find yourself. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe with notifications on. It helps me out a ton, and you'll be the first to see what else I'm up to. As always, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.